You know, perfect is a very strong word, but I truly believe that these watches are perfect. Welcome back to Time on the Wrist at Chisholm Hunter. My name is Harrison, as always, and you know, there's thousands of watches in the industry. There's thousands of watches produced every year, but there's only a select few that I think are perfect. And those 6 watches are what we're going to be going over in this video. First up, we have a watch that one day I will own. It's the AP Royal Oak 15500ST. That's the beginning of the model number because the model number is humongous and I'm not going to go over it. And actually, I'm compensating for this watch by owning a Tissot PRX at the moment. That is my dream watch. This is my dream watch that I will eventually get. This watch comes in at 41mm in diameter and 10.5mm in thickness. It's water resistant to 50 meters. And let's just rewind a second to the bit where I said 10.5mm in thickness. This watch wears unbelievably on the wrist because of that thickness combined with the 41mm case. This watch is truly a grail watch, and there's no wonder why it's part of the Holy Trinity. The model that I would want in particular is the white dial variant. I know that you get a couple of dial colors, one of the others being blue, but I think the white plays against that 70s inspired bracelet and design and angular case just wonderfully, as well as the screws lining up perfectly and reflecting the light absolutely wonderfully. How many descriptive words did I just throw at you? That was absolutely brilliant. By the way, this watch comes in at about, at retail, £23,000. £23,900, but on the pre-owned market you can expect to pay about £36,000, around about that, because obviously it's AP, it's part of the Holy Trinity. You cannot buy this watch readily. The movement in this model, of course, is the in-house caliber 4302. It has 32 joules, it's fully automatic, has a 70-hour power reserve, and just remember the thickness of this watch at 10.5mm when you're thinking of a 70-hour power reserve, because that is pretty impressive. It has the total diameter of 32mm and has 257 parts. It beats at a frequency of 28,800 VPH and has a thickness of 4.9. The reason that I'm picking this watch first is that I don't think there's been a watch in the industry that has had the same impact on me as this model. I honestly don't. The only other that compares to it is the VC Overseas Everest edition that we did a photo shoot on. They sent it to me because of my personal profile to do a photo shoot on. I've always wanted this watch. I will always want this watch, and I'll be working up until the point that I get this watch. And if I have enough money for this watch, the likelihood is you won't see me anymore because I'll probably retire. Next up, we have another guest from the Holy Trinity. But before we get into that special guest from the Holy Trinity, I need to say something. And I need to say, you are making this watch community truly the best community on YouTube. I genuinely believe that. And our goal for this year is to extend the reach of that community to 50,000 subscribers. So if you could hit that subscribe button and help us build and reach more watch lovers, it would be much appreciated. The next watch we have is a pretty special one. It's the Vacheron Constantin Overseas Tourbillon with a blue dial, and it's in pink gold. This thing is absolutely phenomenal, and actually the only reason I got to see it, I was allowed to see it, is because Chisholm Hunter are authorized retailers for Vacheron watches. Of a matter of fact, they're authorized retailers for a ton of watches. If you want to shop any watch, whether it's your first or you're just adding to the collection, then click the link below. The model number of this watch is 6000V/110R-B733. This model is in full 18 karat 5N rose gold, which is unbelievable, and houses an ultra slim movement, which is just 5.56mm thick, and a tourbillon cage inspired by a Maltese cross. It's fitted with a 22 karat gold rotor, and this model offers a power reserve of more than 3 days, which is just unbelievable. The thickness of this model in general comes in at 10.3 0.9mm. And for a tourbillon model, that's pretty impressive. It has a transparent case back in sapphire crystal glass, so you can see into that beautiful movement. It comes in at 50mm of water resistance, and the movement in this model, if you want to know, is the caliber 2160, which has 30 joules, 188 parts, and a power reserve of, as I said previously, around about 80 hours. It also beats a frequency of 18,000 VPH, and I could go on about this model all day, but let me talk about the case shape and design. The rose gold on this watch plays against that blue dial, which is sunray finished absolutely wonderfully. It looks stunning. I cannot compare any watch to this because I've never seen anything like this. The degree of craftsmanship that goes into Vacheron Constantin watches is just unmatched. It's unbelievable. And to top off, they have that beautiful tourbillon movement sitting at 6 o'clock, which makes everything symmetrical. Now, I would actually take the bracelet off this watch and put the blue rubber strap on it because I think that looks a lot nicer and I'd be a little bit less scared to damage it. But I do think with the bracelet, this is the perfect dress sports watch. And I don't say that lightly. The next watch is the Rolex Daytona 11652, which was actually discontinued in 2016. Now, a lot of you might think it's not perfect, and I understand that because it doesn't have that ceramic bezel. It doesn't have those upgrades that the new Daytona has. But what it does have to me is personal ties, because I remember someone very important in my life wearing this model when I first got into the watch industry. And when I first got into the watch industry, I remember I always had aspirations to get that specific model. And for some reason in my head, it's just always been perfect. The movement in this model is the Rolex caliber 4130. It of course comes in full stainless steel. It has a diameter of 40mm, which by the way, just sits wonderfully on the wrist. Rolex have a real knack for getting their measurements perfect, as do Tudor actually, but we'll touch on that a bit later. And it comes in at a thickness of 12mm. The dial is white, and let's just talk about that for a sec. So as I just said there, the dial on this model is fully white, and the reason that I think this watch is perfect comparison to the upgrade, the new Rolex Daytona, is because of the way that the white plays against that stainless steel bezel. It just looks wonderfully clean to me. There's no contrast, it's very simplistic, it's all the same shade, all the same color. It looks brilliant, and yes, I like the Panda, I do, but I just think it takes a degree of its authenticity away. It takes a degree of its rustic nature away. And I know that ceramic's better because it doesn't scratch as much. I get it, I understand it, and something that steel does over time is scratch. But I think that's also what gives it character and what makes it more of a vintage piece. The next watch that I'm going to cover is a pretty interesting one. And it's an interesting one for a couple of different reasons. It's interesting firstly because they actually used to supply the movement to the Rolex Daytona. This is Zenith Chronomaster Sport, and I think it's damn near perfect. This watch comes in at 41mm in diameter, is water resistant to 100 meters, and the dial, of course, is either white or black. Now, I would go with the white dial because I love the way it plays with that black ceramic. However, I would like to see a stainless steel bezel version. The movement in this model is the El Primero 3600, and it beats at a frequency of 36,000 VPH, as well as having a power reserve of 60 hours. The reason that I've actually added Zenith in here is because I think they're doing brilliant work at the moment. I think if you rewound about 7 years when I began in the industry, Zenith were releasing very classic, very contemporary, brilliant works of art in terms of watchmaking, but they didn't fit the bill in terms of the stylish, sporty nature of today. Everyone wants a 70s inspired kind of Genta designed watch. That's what everybody goes for, and Zenith just weren't doing it. They were maybe too classic, too contemporary. Given their movements are fantastic, but they didn't fit the bill. However, within the last 5 or 4 years, actually, we could probably coordinate this with the time that Julien Tourneur, the CEO of Zenith, joined. Their designs have been phenomenal. They've had the Zenith Skyline, the Zenith Defy Skyline, or the Zenith Defy range in general, and they've also had the Chronomaster Sport. All of these designs are sporty, 70s inspired with the incredible movements that Zenith can offer, and I think they're doing fantastic work at the moment. And that is the Zenith Chronomaster Sport. I think it's damn near perfect. I like how they've added some funky colors as well to stick with that kind of Zenith theme. So it's definitely worth trying on. It's damn near perfect. The only thing that I would maybe change is to bring it down to 40mm instead of 41. The next watch that we're going to cover, this is pretty much perfect, is the Tudor Blancpain 58. And speak of the devil, Drew himself, the man behind the camera, has just got one. We'll cover the specs really quickly first, and as soon as Drew actually gets he's ordered the watch, basically he's put a deposit down, and it's not here yet, but when it arrives, we'll be showing you that in a video, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. The Tudor Blancpain 58 comes in at 39mm in diameter, and comes in full stainless steel. It has scratch-resistant sapphire crystal glass, comes with a black dial, but you also have the option of a blue bezeled one as well, which is pretty cool. I prefer the black, but you can get the blue if you want it. And finally, the movement on this watch is the MT5402 COSC certified chronometer, which is automatic and self-winding. You know, I remember when Tudor first released their Blancpain lineup back in 2012, and believe me, I remember I have one. I literally got one. I got the ETA version. And it caused a lot of ripples. The Blancpain heritage caused a hell of a lot of ripples. Tudor was this new brand penetrating the market, and they made big waves for starting out the way that they did. When they released the Blancpain 58, that was amplified times 10. And it was brilliant. It was carnage. Everyone wanted these Blancpain 58 models because the sizing was just perfect for slimmer wrists. Tudor recognized that not everyone wanting a dive watch actually dives. It doesn't need to go to water resistance of 300 meters, because who actually dives with a diving watch? And because they recognized that, they slimmed it down to 39mm, making it a lot more wearable for a bigger audience, a mass audience. The reason I love these watches so much, the Blancpain 58 range so much, is it doesn't overcomplicate stuff, but at the same time, it does things that every other brand would just not really do. It has a splash of red, it adds pops of color, it has pretty vintage inspired looking indices that are coated in gold. It just has a lot of stuff that other brands wouldn't get involved in out of maybe fear, out of maybe getting it wrong. But they, I hate to use their own catchphrase here, but they've dared to be different, born to dare, and it's kind of worked. Last but not least, we have the king under the ocean. The king on the movie screen, and the king of my wrist. It is the Amiga Seamaster 300mm, and it's a watch that I get slated for on this channel now because I talk so much about it. But I think it's unbelievable. It comes in at 42mm in diameter, but it does, I have to say this, it does look quite chunky because of that little helium escape valve, which I think is iconic to the Amiga Seamaster at like the 10 o'clock mark, around about there. It has a ceramic bezel, goes to water resistance of 300 meters, has a sapphire crystal case back, and on the front it has sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating on either side. It's mental how I've memorized all this, and it also has a COSC and METAS certified movement. Now that's very important because METAS certification is damn difficult to get, and the fact that Amiga have done this in a watch at this price is just mental. Now the reason that I love this watch, the reason that I got this watch, is because the sentimental attachment I put on it from watching James Bond with my dad. When you think of James Bond, you think of Amiga. When you think of the moon landings, you think of Amiga. I think their marketing is absolutely phenomenal. The reason that I love Amiga so much, and by the way, I can never figure out whether it's Amiga or Amiga, because Daniel Craig himself said it was Amiga.
Every Amiga I've ever worn.
And Adrian Barker and you guys commenting are saying it's Amiga. So I don't actually know which one it is. Let me know in the comments. It might just be my accent, but I think it's Amiga. But the reason I love this brand is that they back up their marketing with cold, hard quality. You get a lot of brands nowadays that are on social media, YouTube and Instagram, that just market their products, and the products aren't actually that great. You get them and you think, oh, if it's not actually what it seemed to be in the YouTube review or whatever it is. However, with Amiga, that quality is backed up. I've had mine for years and it's phenomenal. Listen, I know that this list might be quite controversial. I know that a lot of you might not agree with this list, but this is just watches that I think are absolutely perfect. But instead of talking about me, I'd love to hear about you. What watches do you think are perfect in the industry? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed, please hit that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it, and it helps us get to our goal of 50,000 subscribers. You guys are incredible, and I'll see you in a couple of days.